He had an empire, she merely a mop, but for the love that bound them, he lost absolutely everything. The silence that followed Julian's decision was more deafening than any angry shout from his father. Gone was the ostentation of polished marble underfoot, the echo of empty laughter through the mansion's halls. The vastness of his empire had shrunk to the cramped confines of a small rented apartment, where the scent of dampness and cheap food replaced the aroma of exotic flowers and gourmet coffee. Clara watched Julian as he tried to adjust. His fingers, once accustomed to holding crystal goblets and gold pens, now fumbled with a simple can opener. The metallic pop of the can opening filled the tiny kitchen, a stark contrast to the gentle clinking of silver cutlery he once knew. He sighed, frustration evident on his face. I don't know how to do this, Clara." She moved closer, taking the opener from his hands and popping open the second can with an ease he might never possess. "Don't worry, Julian. We'll learn. Together." Her voice was a balm, soft yet firm, and he found himself clinging to her strength like a castaway to shore. The first few days were a brutal test. The thin mattress on the bedroom floor, the shower that oscillated between icy cold and scalding hot, the constant street noise that invaded the uninsulated window. Julian, the man who had never worried about the cost of anything, now counted every cent to buy rice and vegetables. He tried to find work, but his resume, filled with executive positions at companies that now saw him as a pariah, opened no doors. Rejection was a constant blow, each no a hammer strike to his ego. One morning, as Clara hand-washed clothes in the kitchen sink, the building's laundry room was too expensive, Julian watched her scrub with tireless energy. The soap frothed white, and the sound of running water and clothes being wrung out was the soundtrack to their new reality. He felt a pang of shame. "I'm useless," he murmured, the words heavy in his mouth. "I brought you to this. You deserved so much more." Clara paused, wet hands, and turned to him. Her dark eyes, always filled with a stubborn light, met his with an intensity that made him recoil. "Julian, look at me." He obeyed. "What did I deserve? An empty life of luxury? A gilded cage where I'd be nothing more than a prop?" She stepped closer, drying her hands on her apron. "I deserve you. I deserve a love that doesn't bend to money or status, and that, my love, is exactly what I have." She cupped his face in her hands, her palms rough from hard work, but the touch was of a tenderness he had never felt before. "Money didn't give us the courage to face your family. Money didn't give us the strength to choose each other. It was our love, Julian. And that love wasn't lost when you lost your fortune. It grew stronger." Her words hit him like a lightning bolt. He pulled her into a tight embrace, her scent of soap and dampness the sweetest perfume he had ever smelled. For the first time since his world had crumbled, Julian felt a profound peace. The mansion, the cars, the companies, all seemed distant, a blurred memory from another life. What mattered was the warmth of Clara's body against his. Her heartbeat he could feel. They had no money, no status, but they had each other. And in that tight embrace, Julian began to understand that true ruin wasn't material loss, but the absence of love. And he, miraculously, had avoided that ruin. They would have to find a way to survive, to build a new life from scratch. But now, he knew he wouldn't be alone. The challenge was immense, but the strength emanating from Clara was a promise that together they could face anything. The warmth of Clara's embrace stayed with Julian, a shield against the cold uncertainty that surrounded them. But the certainty of love didn't pay the rent or fill the empty pantry. As dawn broke the next day, the faint light filtering through the small apartment window revealed the harsh reality. They needed to act. Clara was already up, the smell of cheap coffee spreading through the tiny kitchen, the sound of water boiling in the kettle, A sharp, constant whistle was the only noise besides the morning traffic outside. "Julian," she said, her voice soft but laden with purpose. "We'll find a way. You need to try again." He nodded, her determination seeping into his own weary spirit. That day, Julian set aside his impeccable suit and donned a simple shirt and worn jeans, the only clothes that didn't scream, "Failed millionaire." He stepped out into the bustling streets of the city, a man who once commanded empires, now just another face in the crowd, searching for any opportunity. Doors continued to close. His resume, a glittering list of corporate achievements, was met with looks of suspicion or pity. Too much experience for the position, some said. No practical experience, others claimed, referring to the manual labor he had never needed to consider. The repetitive sound of "no" echoed in his ears, each refusal a small wound. He tried at restaurants, convenience stores, even construction sites, where the rough laughter of the workers made him shrink. By nightfall, he returned home, shoulders slumped, his body heavy with exhaustion and his soul with frustration. Clara awaited him with a simple, comforting stew, its spicy and reassuring aroma filling the air. She didn't ask about his day, her eyes already gave him the answer. Instead, she simply embraced him, the warmth of her body a balm. "I can't do this, Clara," he confessed, his voice choked. "I'm useless. I don't know how to do anything but manage." She pulled back slightly, cupping his face. "You know how to love, Julian, and that's the most important thing." She smiled, a smile that lit up the small room. "But you'll also learn to do other things. We'll learn. Together." That night, as Julian scoured a newspaper for job ads, his eyes landed on a small section, "Moving helper." The pay was low, the work heavy, but it required no resume, just strength and willingness. He hesitated. Carrying boxes? He, Julian? Pride gnawed at him, but the image of Clara's face, full of faith in him, spurred him on. The next morning, he presented himself at a small moving company. The owner, a burly man in a stained apron, looked him up and down. "Looks a bit weak for the job, son," he growled, the deep sound of his voice filling the small office. "But if you want to try, payments at the end of the day." Julian accepted. The work was brutal. He carried heavy boxes, dusty furniture, climbed endless stairs up and down. His muscles ached in ways he never knew existed. Sweat streamed down his face, blurring his vision. The smell of old wood and other people's sweat clung to his clothes. At one point, while trying to lift an old sofa, his knees buckled. The sofa fell with a dull thud, and a sharp pang of pain shot through his back. A co-worker, a lean young man with surprisingly strong arms, helped him up. "First day?" he asked, a sympathetic smile on his face. Julian just nodded, panting. "It gets better. Either you get stronger or you quit. That's life." Julian didn't give up. He forced himself to continue, every muscle protesting, every drop of sweat a testament to his effort. As the sun began to set and the workday finally ended, he felt an exhaustion that was almost euphoric. The owner handed him a thin envelope with a few bills. It wasn't much, but it was the first time in his life that the money he held was the fruit of his own manual, sweaty, painful labor. He walked home, his body throbbing, but with a lightness in his heart. The sound of his footsteps on the sidewalk, once echoing with loss, now resonated with a new melody of conquest. Upon arrival, Clara awaited him at the door, her eyes shining. He didn't need to say anything. The smudge of dirt on his cheek and the sparkle in his eyes told the story. "You did it," she whispered, the sound of her voice more gratifying than any applause he had ever received. He pulled the envelope from his pocket, the crumpled bills inside. "We did it," he corrected, extending it to her. "It's for us." Clara took the money, but her eyes were fixed on him. "You're dirty and tired," she said, "but I've never seen you so present." In that instant, Julian realized that true wealth wasn't in bank accounts or properties, but in the dignity of a task accomplished and in shared love. He had lost everything, but he had found himself, and more importantly, he had found purpose by her side. Material ruin had become the crucible where the true value of their passion was forged, and he knew, with unwavering certainty, that this was just the beginning of their new life together. They had enough money for a simple dinner, and, for the first time in a long while, Julian felt he had everything he needed. That night's simple dinner, prepared with Julian's hard-earned money, was more flavorful than any meal he had ever enjoyed in his old life. The scent of garlic and spice from the comforting stew filled the small apartment, and each spoonful was a tangible reminder of their new reality. Clara watched him with a sparkle in her eyes, a discreet smile on her lips. "You're exhausted," she said, her voice soft as a whisper. He nodded, feeling every muscle in his body protest. The thin mattress on the floor felt like a feather bed when he finally lay down, and the constant street noise, once irritating, was now just a distant hum as sleep pulled him away. The following days became a routine of pain and discovery. Julian continued working at the moving company. Each morning, he woke with his body throbbing, shoulders stiff, hands rough and calloused. The smell of sweat and dust clung to his clothes, and the sound of boxes being dragged and furniture being carried became the soundtrack to his waking hours. He learned to lift with his legs, not his back, to balance weight and anticipate his colleagues' movements. The lean young man, now known as Mark, became a work companion, and their short conversations and shared laughter during breaks were a small relief. "You're getting stronger, buddy," Mark observed one day, as Julian lifted a refrigerator with an ease that would have been unthinkable weeks before. The metallic scrape of the refrigerator being dragged across the concrete floor was loud, but Julian barely noticed. Julian smiled, a genuine smile that rarely appeared on his face before. "It's necessity, Mark, and Clara's comforting stew." At home, Clara managed every dollar with the precision of an accountant. She discovered the cheapest markets, learned to make delicious dishes with simple ingredients, and fixed a dripping faucet with a piece of rubber and duct tape, the annoying sound of the drip finally silenced. She mended a hole in Julian's only work shirt and transformed an old sheet into a pair of curtains for the window, blocking some of the harsh morning light. The apartment, once just an empty space, began to take the shape of a home, filled with the scent of home-cooked food and the sound of their low voices at night. One evening, as Julian massaged Clara's aching feet after a long day of walking in search of better prices, he saw her with a new perspective. Her hands, once soft and manicured, were now calloused and strong. Her eyes, which once expressed a quiet resilience, now shone with an even more intense determination. "I don't know how you do it," he confessed, his thumb brushing the rough skin of her heel. "You're incredible." Clara laughed, the sound light and melodious. "I always did this, Julian. The difference is that now you're paying attention." She leaned in and kissed his forehead. "But we need more. The moving work is good, but it's not enough to build something lasting." Those words hung in the air. Julian knew she was right. The money he earned barely covered rent and food. There was no room for savings, for a future. The next morning, as the smell of coffee mingled with the steam of cooking rice, Clara placed a small notebook on the table. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice serious. "You have a mind for business, Julian, and I know how to clean. I know how to organize." He looked at her confused. "What are you suggesting?" "We can't afford to wait for someone to give us a chance," she continued, her eyes fixed on him. "We need to create our own chance. What if we start a cleaning business?" Julian frowned, Cleaning? Clara, I don't know anything about commercial cleaning. But I do, she replied, her voice full of conviction. And you know how to manage, how to get clients, how to make a business grow. Together, Julian, we can do this. It's not a mansion, but it's a start. It's ours. The sound of her voice was a melody of hope. He looked at the notebook, then at her. The idea was audacious, almost ridiculous, considering where they came from. But there was a spark in her eyes, a determination he knew was contagious. Material ruin had taken everything from them, but it had given them something far more valuable. The freedom to start anew, together, with nothing but their love and their wits. He felt a warmth spread in his chest, not of shame, but of a new kind of pride. They weren't just surviving. They were starting to build. And the sound of the future, however uncertain, began to sound like a promise. The melody of hope in Clara's voice echoed in the small apartment, reverberating off the peeling walls and modest furniture. Julian felt the warmth in his chest intensify, mingling with a pang of anxiety. Cleaning, he, Julian, the heir to an empire, would now be at the helm of a cleaning business. The irony was palpable, almost suffocating. But Clara's steady gaze wouldn't allow wounded pride to overcome him. Cleaning, he repeated, trying to savor the word to make it familiar. It's a start. But how? We don't have money for equipment, for a car, for anything. Clara took his hand, her fingers rough and strong. We have what we need, our hands, our wits, and the will to work. We start small. We offer residential cleaning for small offices. We use public transport, carry our own buckets. The money you earned from moving can be our starting capital. The idea, once audacious, now seemed not only possible, but the only way forward. Julian felt a new kind of energy bubble within him. He wasn't just surviving, he was building together. In the following days, the small apartment transformed into an improvised headquarters. Clara's notebook filled with lists, essential cleaning products, prices, a small market survey. Julian, with his sharp business mind, began mapping neighborhoods, thinking about outreach strategies. They used Julian's hard-earned money to buy buckets, cloths, sponges, and some basic products from a discount store. The smell of bleach and detergent began to mix with the scent of home-cooked food, permeating the air of the small space. We need a name, Clara suggested one evening, as they ate a simple dinner of rice and vegetables. Something that conveys trust, but also our essence. Julian pondered, his fork paused in midair. How about Clean Dawn? It symbolizes a new beginning, clarity. Clara smiled, the sound light and happy. Perfect. Clean Dawn. The search for clients was arduous. Julian, who once commanded board meetings, now knocked door to door at small businesses, distributing handmade flyers. He faced suspicious glances, closed doors, and polite refusals. Each no was a blow, but the image of Clara, waiting for him with a smile and a word of encouragement, spurred him on. Don't give up, Julian, she would say, massaging his tired shoulders. The first seed is always the hardest to plant. The first opportunity came from a small neighborhood beauty salon run by an elderly lady with thick glasses and a blue perm. She had seen Julian's flyer and, with a sigh, admitted her old cleaner had retired. The price is good, she drawled, but I want to see your work. If it's good, we can talk about a weekly contract. Julian's heart pounded. It was a chance. It was their chance. The next morning, carrying their buckets and products in backpacks and bags, they took the bus to the salon. The smell of hair chemicals and nail polish, mixed with accumulated dust, was strong in the air. The floor was covered in hair strands and stains. The mirrors were foggy and the chairs dirty. Ready to begin, Mr. Millionaire? Clara teased, handing him a brush and a spray bottle. Julian laughed, a genuine sound of joy and nervousness. "More ready than ever, Miss Entrepreneur." They began. Clara, with her years of experience cleaning Julian's mansion, knew exactly where to start. She instructed Julian on the correct technique for cleaning mirrors without leaving streaks, how to efficiently scrub the floor, and how to disinfect tools. Julian, initially clumsy, soon got the hang of it. He scrubbed the floor with an energy he never imagined possessing, sweat streaming down his forehead as the sound of the brush scraping the floor mingled with the spray of the products. Clara cleaned the countertops, organized the products, her movements swift and precise. Hours passed. Their muscles ached, their backs protested, but with each stain removed, each surface gleaming, they felt a deep satisfaction. They talked, laughed, and for a moment forgot the world outside. When they finished, the salon was unrecognizable. The mirrors gleamed, the floor shone, and a fresh scent of cleanliness filled the air. The salon owner returned, and her eyes widened. "What miracle is this?" she exclaimed, her voice full of surprise and admiration. "You two are incredible." She handed Julian an envelope with a few bills. It wasn't a fortune, but it was the first money they had earned together from their own business. The rustle of the banknotes, once so common in his life, had never sounded so sweet. "They want a weekly contract," Clara whispered, her eyes shining. Julian held the envelope, feeling the weight of the bills. He looked at Clara, at the impeccable salon, at his own dirty but proud hands. Ruin had taken his fortune, but it had given them something far more precious: the dignity of work, the strength of their partnership, and the promise that together they could build anything, one step, one bucket, and one smile at a time. The sound of their hearts beating in unison was the most beautiful song of victory. That envelope, with the weight of their first payment, was more than money. It was proof that they could make things happen. The rustle of the banknotes, once so common in his life, had never sounded so sweet. The salon owner, with a smile that lit up her wrinkled face, shook Julian's hand, sealing Clean Dawn's first weekly contract. The days that followed were an exhausting mix of hard work and growing hope. The beauty salon became their bastion, a place where they could refine their techniques and build a reputation. Clara, with her innate precision, ensured every corner gleamed, while Julian, with his renewed energy, scrubbed floors and polished mirrors until they reflected light perfectly. The sound of the brush scraping the floor and the spray of cleaning products became the soundtrack of their Tuesday mornings. But one contract wasn't enough. Julian continued his tireless search for new clients. He walked the streets, his worn soles slapping against the asphalt, distributing flyers Clara had carefully designed by hand. Every door that opened was an opportunity, every yes a relief, every no a sting he forced himself to ignore. He visited small offices, convenience stores, cafes. The smell of fresh coffee and the soft music of a small bistro mingled with his prospecting routine. Slowly, Clean Dawn began to take shape. A small dental office, impressed by the salon owner's recommendation, hired them for bi-weekly cleaning. The sharp hum of the vacuum cleaner motor joined the repertoire of their work sounds. Then, a cozy bookstore, where the scent of old books mingled with the aroma of cleanliness they left behind. The creak of wooden shelves, as Clara cleaned them, was a familiar sound. With each new client, Clara and Julian's routine became more intense. They woke before the sun, the sound of the alarm clock cutting through the pre-dawn silence. They carried their supplies, now a bit more varied, in heavy backpacks and bags, taking buses and subways, the rumble of the tracks and the murmur of other people's conversations accompanying them on their journeys. At night, they returned to their small apartment, bodies aching, muscles protesting with every movement. "My back is killing me," Julian grumbled one night as Clara massaged his tense shoulders. The soft crackle of his knots unraveling was almost audible. Clara laughed, a tired but happy sound. "Welcome to the real world, Julian. But look what we're building." They were building money, once so scarce, now allowed for small improvements. They bought a foldable handcart to transport buckets and products, easing some of the weight from their backpacks. The squeak of its wheels on the asphalt was a small anthem to their perseverance. They bought a more powerful vacuum cleaner, its strong, efficient hum cutting through dust with greater ease. The apartment, once a refuge for rest, was now also an operations center. Clara's notebook was filled with schedules, budgets, and a growing client list. Julian, who once delegated tasks to hundreds of employees, was now the sales manager, driver, cleaner, and accountant. He learned to negotiate prices, handle complaints, and celebrate every small victory. The ring of his phone with a new inquiry was music to his ears. One evening, as they dined on comforting stew, hot steam rising from the bowl, Julian looked at Clara. Her eyes, once filled with quiet worry, now shone with fierce determination, but also with genuine joy. "Remember when I said I didn't know how you did it?" he asked, his voice soft. "Now I know. It's necessity and passion and the belief that we can build something together." Clara smiled, the sound of her light, melodious laughter filling the small space. "We're a good team, aren't we?" He held her hand, their calloused fingers intertwining. "The best, and we're just getting started." The sound of the future, however challenging, now resonated with the promise of an endeavor that was truly theirs, built with their own hands, their sweat, and their unwavering love. The city noise outside, once indifferent, now seemed like a chorus celebrating every step of their journey. The city noise outside, once indifferent, now seemed like a chorus celebrating every step of their journey. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Clean Dawn was no longer just an idea or a weekly contract. It was a vibrant, albeit exhausting reality. The client list in Clara's notebook grew daily. The small beauty salon and dental office had become loyal clients, and their recommendations opened doors to new offices, more convenience stores, and even some private residences seeking impeccable cleaning service. Clara and Julian worked tirelessly. Mornings began before dawn, the sound of the alarm clock cutting through the apartment's silence at 4:30. The smell of fresh coffee and toasted bread filled the air as they reviewed the day's schedules. They pushed the foldable cart, now heavier with a wider variety of products and equipment, through the still, dark streets, the squeak of its wheels on the asphalt echoing in the quiet. The rumble of the subway, the murmur of passenger conversations, and the train's whistle became the soundtrack to their daily journeys. Their bodies, once accustomed to different rhythms, now protested with constant aches. Julian's muscles, which had once only exercised in luxury gyms, were now calloused and sore from the continuous physical effort of scrubbing, sweeping, and vacuuming. Clara, though more accustomed to manual labor, felt the weight of responsibility and accumulated fatigue. One night, as Julian applied a warm compress to her back, a soft groan escaped her lips. "We can't go on like this," he said, his voice hoarse with concern. "We're burning out." Clara nodded, her eyes closed. "I know, but every cent counts. We need a reserve before we think about anything else." The truth was, they were at a crossroads. Demand was greater than their capacity. They were turning down jobs, and that meant losing money and growth opportunities. With each call, Julian had to refuse. A sound of frustration escaped his throat. What if we hire someone?" Julian suggested one morning as they drank coffee. The clink of the spoon stirring sugar was the only sound in the apartment. Clara looked at him, surprised. "Hire? Julian, you know what that means. Salary, taxes, training. It's a big risk." "I know," he replied, his brow furrowed. But it's a risk we need to take if we want Clean Dawn to grow. We can't do everything ourselves forever. We need to trust someone. The decision wasn't easy. They spent nights discussing the pros and cons, the sound of their low, thoughtful voices filling the apartment. Julian, with his management experience, began to draw up a simplified business plan, calculating costs and projecting revenues. Clara, with her practical knowledge, listed the essential qualities for a good employee. The search for their first employee was as challenging as the search for their first clients. They placed a small ad in a local newspaper and posted flyers on neighborhood bulletin boards. The first interviews were disheartening. Some candidates had no experience, others seemed uninterested. The sound of shuffling feet and monosyllabic answers filled the small apartment during the interviews. Then one afternoon, a young university student named Sarah appeared. She had bright eyes, an open smile, and contagious energy. She had no professional cleaning experience, but she was eager to learn and desperately needed a job to pay for her studies. The sound of her light laughter and her enthusiastic voice ignited a spark of hope in Clara and Julian. "I can learn quickly," Sarah said, her voice firm, "and I'm very organized." Julian and Clara exchanged glances. There was something in the girl's determination that reminded them of themselves. They decided to give her a chance. The first few days of training were intense. Clara, with her patience and precision, taught Sarah the secrets of perfect cleaning, how to fold cloths to maximize cleaning surface, the correct order to clean a room, the importance of every detail. Julian, in turn, taught about the importance of customer service and time management. The sound of Clara's clear, methodical instructions mingled with the hum of the vacuum cleaner as Sarah learned. Sarah proved to be a dedicated student and a tireless worker. Within weeks, she was cleaning with the efficiency of a veteran. The sound of her handcart, now with 3 buckets instead of 2, was a melody of progress. Clean Dawn now had a team of 3, and the workload began to lessen. One evening, as they dined, Julian looked at Clara, a tired but satisfied smile on his face. "We did it," he said, his voice full of pride. "We hired someone, and she's great." Clara smiled, the sound of her light, happy laughter. "We're more than a team now, Julian. We're a small company, and we're just beginning to see what we can build." The sound of the future, with its challenges and promises, now included the bustle of more hands working, the murmur of new voices, and the promise that their love and effort were, indeed, building a new legacy, one clean brick at a time. Sarah's presence was a balm for Clean Dawn. The weight that once rested on Clara and Julian's shoulders considerably lessened. The sound of the handcart, once a melody of 2, now resonated with the energy of 3, and efficiency tripled. They could take on more jobs, and Clara's notebook, once a record of struggles, was now a testament to progress, with pages filled with new names and schedules. Demand continued to grow. Recommendations from loyal clients spread like the aroma of cleanliness they left behind. Offices that once seemed unattainable, department stores with glittering display windows, and even some small art galleries, where silence was broken only by the whisper of brushes and the soft hum of the vacuum, began to call. The ring of the phone, once a welcome surprise, became a constant, a call to action. "We need more people, Julian," Clara said one afternoon as they reviewed the tight schedule. The click of her pen-marking appointments was precise and determined. "Sarah is amazing, but we can't stretch her too thin, and us either." Julian nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. He had become a master of logistics and personnel management, skills he never imagined using outside his father's corporate world. The click-clack of his laptop keys as he calculated cost and profit projections was a stark contrast to the clicks of the expensive watches that once adorned his wrist. The search for new employees was easier this time. Clean Dawn had a reputation to uphold. and word spread that they paid fairly and treated their employees with respect. They hired 2 more people, a retired gentleman named Mr. Henderson, who sought extra income and brought a quiet calm and wisdom to the team, and a young mother, Emily, who worked with vibrant energy to support her family. The sound of their voices mingling in the small apartment during morning meetings was a chorus of hope and purpose. The apartment, however, was becoming too small. Buckets, cleaning products, vacuum cleaners, and foldable carts crammed every corner. The smell of disinfectant and wax mingled with the aroma of coffee, creating a peculiar fragrance that was now the scent of success. "We can't store everything here anymore," Julian observed one morning as he tripped over a pile of clean cloths. The sound of his grumble was accompanied by the clinking of bottles. "And we need a space for meetings, a place where we can truly organize ourselves." The idea of an office or a small warehouse seemed a luxury, but it was a necessity. They found a small space to rent in an older commercial district, a former warehouse that had been emptied. It was cramped, with peeling walls and a persistent smell of mold. But it was theirs. The click of the key turning in the lock for the first time was a milestone. With the help of Sarah, Mr. Henderson, and Emily, they transformed the space. Julian, sleeves rolled up, painted the walls a clean white, the rhythmic swish of the paint roller gliding over the surface. Clara organized the shelves with products and equipment, the clinking of glass and plastic containers echoing in the empty space. They installed a small table and a few chairs, and the sound of their lively conversations filled the air. Clean Dawn now had a base. Mornings still began before the sun, but now the team met in the small office. The buzz of voices, the clinking of buckets being loaded onto carts, and the sound of their small fleet of rented vehicles' engines, only 2 for now, but a big step, became the symphony of their new workday. Julian, now a true entrepreneur, dealt with management challenges, payroll, taxes, equipment maintenance. His backache still accompanied him, but now they were a reminder of a job well done, not of a wasted life. Clara, the operations supervisor, ensured the impeccable quality that was the company's trademark. She trained new employees with the same patience and precision she used with Sarah, the sound of her clear, encouraging instructions permeating the office. One evening, as Julian and Clara were alone in the office, reviewing the books, the sound of rain tapping on the window was soft. He turned to her, a tired but radiant smile on his face. "Remember that mansion?" he asked, his voice low. "I thought that was everything. But this place is more real. It's ours." Clara moved closer to him, the sound of her light footsteps on the concrete floor. She placed her hand on his face, feeling the roughness of his stubble, a testament to the long hours of work. "It's our home, Julian, and we're just beginning to build its foundations." The sound of the future, however challenging, was now not just a promise, but a palpable reality. Built with the sweat of their team, Clara's ingenuity, Julian's resilience, and the love that bound them. A love that transformed each clean brick into a monument to their victory. The sound of the rain outside, once a lament, now seemed to applaud every step of their journey. The soft applause of rain on the small office window transformed, in the following months, into a vibrant chorus of success. Clean Dawn was no longer a promise, but a reality in full expansion. The morning buzz in the office grew each week, a mosaic of animated voices as the team prepared for the day's work. Julian and Clara had hired 3 more employees, bringing the total to 7, including themselves. Mr. Henderson, with his unwavering calm, and Emily, with her contagious energy, were now mentors to the newcomers, imparting the work ethic and quality standards Clara had established. The small office, once a luxury, now barely accommodated the growing team and volume of equipment. Colorful buckets, vacuum cleaners of different sizes, and stacks of microfiber cloths competed for space. The smell of cleaning products, once a fragrance of purpose, was now an intense aroma that permeated the air, mingled with the freshly brewed coffee Clara served every morning. The sound of her hurried footsteps and the clinking of ceramic cups were part of the routine. The vehicle fleet also needed to grow. The 2 rented cars were no longer enough to transport all employees and equipment to the various work sites. Julian spent nights researching used vans, comparing prices and mileage. The click of the mouse and the soft hum of the laptop were the soundtrack to his late nights. Finally, they managed to buy a white van, a bit old but reliable, proudly displaying the Clean Dawn logo on its sides. The hum of the van's engine, a constant purr, was the melody of progress. With expansion came new challenges. Julian found himself immersed in complex spreadsheets, managing payroll, taxes, insurance, and the logistics of an ever-growing team. The click-clack of his computer keys, once a contrast to the expensive watches of his past, was now the heartbeat of his new empire. Clara, in turn, dedicated herself to maintaining the impeccable quality that distinguished them. She visited work sites, inspecting every corner, the sound of her calm, instructive voice guiding employees, ensuring every surface shone and every detail was perfect. Long work hours became the norm. Often they only met at the end of the day, exhausted but satisfied. The sound of their tired sighs mingled with the comforting silence of the apartment. Time for romantic dinners or long conversations had dwindled, replaced by brief moments of affection and mutual support. "We're building something." "Julian," Clara whispered one night, nestling into his arms. "It's hard, but it's worth it." The sound of her heart beating against his was the only answer he needed. Clean Dawn's reputation spread. They began receiving proposals for larger contracts, including the maintenance of a small boutique hotel in the city center. It was a huge opportunity, but also a challenge that would stretch their resources to the limit. Julian hesitated. "It's too big, Clara. I don't know if we have the capacity." The sound of his concern was palpable. Clara looked at him, her eyes shining with the same determination he had first seen in his father's mansion. "We'll manage, Julian. We always do. We have an incredible team, and we have each other." She squeezed his hand, the soft sound of their skin touching. The decision was made. They would accept the hotel contract. The news brought a wave of enthusiasm to the team. The buzz in the office intensified, now with the sound of plans being drawn up and strategies being discussed. Julian and Clara knew it would be the ultimate test of their capabilities, a leap of faith that could either elevate them to a new level or completely exhaust them. But as they looked at the Clean Dawn logo on the side of the new van, the sound of the future, with its challenges and promises, seemed less daunting. They were together, and that was all that mattered. The melody of their love continued to be the driving force, transforming every obstacle into a stepping stone for their ascent, a silent triumph over the legacy Julian had left behind. The buzz in the office, once a chorus of hope, transformed into a symphony of urgency. The boutique hotel contract was an avalanche of work that demanded every ounce of the team's energy. Mornings started even earlier, the pre-dawn darkness still embracing the city when the van's engine, a constant purr, came to life. The sound of doors slamming and equipment clinking as it was loaded was the dawn of an exhausting day. The hotel was a world apart. Every room, every corridor, every detail demanded meticulous attention. Clara was in her element, her eagle eyes scanning every surface, the sound of her calm but firm voice guiding the team. "Don't leave a single hair, a single speck of dust," she instructed, as the vacuum cleaner hummed incessantly on the luxurious carpets. The scent of fine cleaning products, once a novelty, now permeated their clothes and their dreams. Julian, in turn, delved into the logistical and financial challenges. Spreadsheets became his nightly companions. The click of the mouse and the soft hum of the laptop were the soundtrack to his late nights as he calculated costs, scheduled shifts, and ensured every employee received their payment on time. The phone rang incessantly, a constant call to solve a problem, coordinate a delivery, or negotiate with suppliers. Mr. Henderson, with his infinite patience, and Emily, with her tireless energy, were pillars of the team. The sound of their low, encouraging laughter echoed through the hotel corridors, easing the tension of the work. They trained new employees, teaching them the art of folding towels perfectly and the secret to a spotless mirror, the rustle of microfiber cloths over glass, almost hypnotic. The long hours took their toll. Bodies ached, minds were exhausted. Clara and Julian barely saw each other during the day, exchanging only quick glances and tired smiles in the hotel corridors or the crowded office. Time for romantic dinners had vanished, replaced by quick, silent meals in the apartment, the clink of their cutlery against plates the only accompaniment. One evening, as Clara wiped down the office counter with a damp cloth, Julian approached from behind, his arms enveloping her in a tight embrace. The sound of his tired sigh was almost inaudible. "We're doing it, Clara," he whispered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion but full of pride. "The hotel manager praised our work, said he'd never seen such dedication." Clara turned in his arms, the scent of disinfectant still on her hands. But the warmth of his body was a balm. The sound of her heart beating against his was a familiar, comforting rhythm. "I know, Julian, but it's exhausting. We need more people and more vans." The truth was, they were stretching their resources to the limit. The success of the hotel contract, though gratifying, exposed their vulnerabilities. Clean Dawn's reputation grew, and with it, demand. New calls came in, proposals for other hotels, for commercial buildings, for mansions that once would have been Julian's world. The ring of the phone, once a sign of progress, now brought a mix of excitement and apprehension. Julian knew they were at a crossroads. Growing meant investing more, taking bigger risks. The old Julian would have seen this as a game, an opportunity to dominate. But the new Julian saw the people, the tired faces of his team, the sparkle in Clara's eyes. The sound of his own breathing was heavy as he pondered. "We'll find a way," he said, his voice firmer now as he squeezed Clara in his arms. The sound of the rain outside tapping softly on the window seemed to quiet, as if listening. "We always do," Clara nodded, nestling against him. The sound of the future, with its challenges and promises, was still a complex melody, but now they had a rhythm of their own. The love that bound them was the constant beat, the unwavering force that propelled them to clean not just surfaces, but also the path to a future they were building brick by brick, with sweat, ingenuity, and a passion that no material legacy could buy. The hotel's success was just the beginning, a stepping stone to the next challenge, and they were ready to face it together. The decision, though made in a moment of exhaustion, echoed with undeniable clarity the next morning. The usual office buzz now seemed charged with a new purpose. Julian, steaming coffee cup in hand, watched Clara as she reviewed schedules, the soft click of her pen against paper, the only sound breaking the silence of her concentration. The need to grow was urgent, an imperative dictated by the success they had fought so hard to achieve. The search for more vans and employees meant a considerable investment. Julian, who once moved fortunes with a phone call, now found himself immersed in small loan applications, the rustle of paper and the click of the printer filling the small office. He spent days studying business plans, the numbers dancing in his mind as the soft hum of his laptop accompanied him through his late nights. Clara, in turn, dedicated herself to optimizing existing processes, the clinking of buckets being reorganized and the sound of her instructions to the team were constant, ensuring that the quality that distinguished them was not compromised by expansion. The news that they had secured a modest but crucial loan brought a wave of relief and excitement. The sound of celebration, a mix of laughter and applause, echoed through the office when Julian announced the approval. Within weeks, 2 more vans, slightly newer and more efficient, joined the fleet. The purr of their engines as they were started for the first time was music to Julian's ears, a new anthem to progress. The team grew to 12 people, the morning buzz transforming into a lively chorus of voices and the clinking of equipment being loaded, a palpable sign that Clean Dawn was truly flourishing. With expanded capacity, the company could take on bigger challenges. A contract for cleaning a chain of fitness centers with multiple units spread across the city was the next big step. The smell of sweat and disinfectant now mingled with the familiar aroma of coffee in the mornings, a new olfactory complexity in their daily lives. Clara coordinated the teams with mastery, her hurried footsteps echoing through the gym corridors, the sound of her calm but directive voice ensuring that every piece of equipment and every changing room shone with the same perfection as the hotel rooms. Hours continued long. Exhaustion was a constant companion. Dinners in the apartment were even shorter, the silence filled only by the soft clink of cutlery against plates and the fatigue that weighed on their shoulders. But amidst the whirlwind, they found refuge in each other. One night, Julian watched Clara sleep, the soft sound of her breathing filling the room. He nestled against her, the warmth of her body a constant reminder of what truly mattered. The sound of his own heart beating strongly was the melody of his gratitude, a song of love and overcoming. They were building something worth more than any material empire, a legacy of love and hard work, brick by brick, every drop of sweat a testament to their joint victory. Clean Dawn was not just a cleaning company, it was living proof that love, resilience and passion could raise a new world from the ashes of an opulent but empty past. The sound of the future, with its challenges and promises, continued to be a complex melody, but they knew that together they could harmonize any note, transforming every obstacle into a chord of triumph. Success with the fitness center contract was resounding. The smell of disinfectant and sweat, which once mingled with their morning coffee, was now an aroma of victory. Clean Dawn's reputation spread like an efficient whisper through the city, carried by satisfied managers and impressed clients. The office phone, which already rang non-stop, now seemed to have a life of its own, an incessant chorus of new opportunities. Julian and Clara found themselves immersed in a new phase of expansion. The small office, which once seemed too spacious for just the two of them, now barely contained the energy and buzz of a 12-person team. In addition to the growing piles of documents and equipment, the click-clack of Julian's keyboard, once a solitary accompaniment to his late nights, now competed with the click of the printer, the rustle of papers being filed, and the soft hum of the new server he had installed to manage the growing client base. Clara, with her keen vision and innate leadership, was the driving force behind operational excellence. She spent most of her days in the field, supervising teams, the squeak of her sneakers echoing through hotel and gym corridors, the crackle of her walkie-talkies a constant in her ear. "Attention to detail always," she instructed, her voice calm but firm as the sound of vacuum cleaners and floor polishers filled the air. Employees, who once saw her as a manager, now considered her a mentor, admiring her dedication and the way she managed to transform the hardest work into a mission of pride. Demand for their services reached a new level when a large corporation, known for its gleaming skyscrapers in the city center, made a proposal. It wasn't just one floor, but the entire headquarters building. The contract was gigantic, a quantum leap in scale and responsibility. Julian read the proposal, the rustle of the paper in his hands, seeming deafening in the momentary silence of the office. He looked at Clara, who sat across from him, her eyes fixed on his. The sound of her breathing was the only thing he could hear. "This is enormous," Julian finally said, his voice a little hoarse. Clara nodded, a slow smile forming on her lips. "It's what we built, Julian. It's the recognition of our work." The decision to accept the corporate contract was unanimous among the team, despite initial apprehension. Mr. Henderson, with his quiet wisdom, and Emily, with her contagious enthusiasm, were instrumental in energizing everyone. The sound of their encouraging voices echoed through meetings, transforming fear into determination. The next few months were a whirlwind. Clean Dawn needed to hire 15 more employees, expanding the team to nearly 30 people. The training process was intense, the sound of Clara's and Mr. Henderson's instructions filling the rented warehouse that now served as a training and storage center. More vans were acquired, the purr of their engines joining the morning symphony that announced the start of each day. Julian, once a financial magnate, now found himself negotiating delivery times for bulk cleaning products, the click of the phone in his ear a constant. He spent hours in meetings with the corporation's managers, the sound of his own words now imbued with an authority that came from experience and hard work, not just his surname. He found himself smiling as he reviewed spreadsheets. The numbers that once represented only profit now symbolized salaries, supported families, and a solid future. Clara, in turn, coordinated the logistics of the teams rotating through the skyscraper, ensuring that every floor, every meeting room, every corporate restroom shone with the perfection that had become the company's trademark. The whir of elevators ascending and descending, the jingle of keys, the whisper of microfiber cloths over glass surfaces, all were part of a complex choreography she mastered with grace. Exhaustion was a constant shadow, but now it came accompanied by deep satisfaction. Dinners in the apartment were even rarer, but when they happened, they were filled with a comfortable silence, the soft clink of their cutlery against plates, punctuated by tired sighs and knowing glances. One night, as Julian watched Clara sleep deeply beside him, the soft sound of her breathing filling the room, he felt a wave of gratitude so intense it almost choked him. He nestled against her, the warmth of her body his safe harbor. The sound of his own heart beating strongly seemed to sing a melody of triumph. They had built an empire, not of inherited money or power, but of sweat, dedication, and unwavering love. Clean Dawn was more than a company. It was living proof that together they could transform any challenge into a stepping stone, any obstacle into an opportunity. They were ready for the next note, for the next chord, for the next ascent. The hum of the new fleet of vans, now more than 20, was a morning symphony that spread through the city streets, carrying the Clean Dawn logo to every corner. The scent of high-quality disinfectant and the impeccable shine their teams left behind became the signature of unparalleled service. The corporate skyscraper, once an intimidating challenge, was now another testament to their success, its floors gleaming under the morning sun like a monument to hard work. The small office, which one day had been the epicenter of their dreams, was replaced by a larger, more modern space, with glass-walled meeting rooms and cubicles for the growing administrative team. The constant click-clack of keyboards, the hum of phones and the buzz of animated voices filled the air, a vibrant testament to the company they had built from scratch. Julian, now an experienced CEO, moved with quiet confidence, his hands handling contracts and spreadsheets with the same dexterity he once operated in the global financial market. The numbers on his screens were no longer just profit, but the future of nearly 50 families who depended on Clean Dawn. Clara, the driving force behind excellence, divided her time between strategy in the office and supervision in the field. The sound of her firm footsteps echoed through the polished corridors of new clients, a renowned private hospital, a supermarket chain, and even an art museum. Her voice, now more resonant and full of authority, guided team managers, while the crackle of her walkie-talkies kept everyone connected, ensuring the promise of perfection was fulfilled in every detail. The company wasn't just growing, it was thriving in a way that surpassed the most optimistic expectations. Recognition came in the form of a Best Service Company of the Year award from the city's Chamber of Commerce. The flash of cameras and the sound of applause in the gala hall were almost deafening, but what truly resonated with Julian and Clara was the feeling of shared accomplishment. They ascended the stage together, hands clasped, eyes shining with a mix of pride and gratitude. The weight of the statuette in their hands was light compared to the weight of the love and work it represented, but with the ascent also came a new form of attention. Days after the awards ceremony, a heavy paper envelope with a familiar seal and a forgotten crest arrived at the new office. Julian recognized it immediately. The soft rustle of the paper as he opened it seemed to vibrate with contained tension. It was an invitation, not for a social event, but for a private dinner with his father at the old mansion. The elegant, formal handwriting was the same as ever, but the underlying message was clear. Come see what you lost. Come see what you could have back. Clara, sitting across from him, watched Julian's expression change. The satisfied smile he had worn since the awards ceremony vanished, replaced by a tense line on his lips. "What is it, Julian?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. He handed the invitation to her. The rustle of the paper was the only sound filling the spacious office. Clara read it, her eyes scanning the words with impressive speed. A gasp of air escaped her lips. "Your father," she murmured, the note of surprise in her voice. Julian nodded, his gaze fixed on the urban landscape through the glass window. He must have seen the news about the award, or perhaps the name Clean Dawn has become impossible to ignore. He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. He's testing the waters, wants to know if the prodigal son is ready to return to the fold. Clara placed the invitation on the desk, aligning it perfectly. "And are you?" Julian turned to her, his eyes meeting hers. In them, Clara saw the same unwavering determination that had led him to abandon everything for her. The soft creak of his chair as he leaned closer to her was a prelude to his words. "Clara, we built this together. Every drop of sweat, every sleepless night, every obstacle overcome. This is ours. My father doesn't understand that. He always saw value in figures, in power, never in love, in purpose." He took her hand, the warmth of her palm a familiar comfort. "I chose you. I chose this life. There's nothing he can offer that compares to what we have." The sound of his own heart beating strongly was the only answer he needed. Clara smiled, a smile that lit up the office. "So, what do we do with this?" she asked, pointing to the invitation. Julian squeezed her hand. "We'll face him, together, but not on his terms. On ours." He stood up, the decision clear in his eyes. The sound of his firm footsteps echoed across the polished floor as he walked to the window, watching the sun set over the city they had conquered. The future, with its new battles and old ghosts, was calling, but they were ready. Clean Dawn was more than just a company. It was a shield, a home, and living proof that love was the most powerful of fortunes. The soft evening light filtered through the office windows, painting the room with golden hues as Julian and Clara prepared. Julian's father's invitation rested on the desk, a silent reminder of the battle ahead. Julian adjusted his tie knot, the rustle of the fabric against his collar the only sound he heard. He looked at Clara, who wore an elegant silk dress, her posture erect and her eyes exuding an impressive calm. "Ready?" he asked, his voice firm. Clara nodded, a small but determined smile playing on her lips. "Always." The drive to the old mansion was filled with a charged silence. The purr of Julian's car engine, a modest model he had bought after his fortune fell, seemed an ironic counterpoint to the luxury cars he used to drive. As they approached the wrought iron gates, their creak as they opened seemed a lament, an echo of the past he had left behind. The mansion was as imposing as he remembered, its lights twinkling like watchful eyes in the growing darkness. The scent of oak wax and rare flowers filled the air as the main door opened, revealing a butler with an impassive expression. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floors as they were led to the dining room. Mr. Caldwell, Julian's father, was already seated at the head of the long mahogany table. His eyes, as sharp as ever, swept over Clara with calculated coldness before settling on his son. There was no warmth in his gaze, only a silent assessment. The clinking of silver cutlery against fine porcelain seemed deafening in the silence that followed. "Julian," Mr. Caldwell finally said, his voice deep and emotionless, "I see you've brought company." "Father, this is Clara, my wife and partner at Clean Dawn," Julian replied, his voice calm and controlled, but with a firmness that didn't go unnoticed. He took Clara's hand under the table, a subtle gesture of support. Dinner proceeded with a glacial formality. The clink of forks and knives was the only interruption to the tense silence. Mr. Caldwell, between sips of wine, began to weave comments about the real world, about the ephemerality of smaller ventures and the solidity of a legacy. He spoke of numbers, of influence, of the power Julian had wasted. "Your name, Julian, still carries weight. It's not too late for you to return, for you to assume your rightful place," Mr. Caldwell proposed, his voice smooth as silk, but with an edge of steel. "I can reverse your financial situation. I can make Clean Dawn a subsidiary of something larger, more worthy, and you, Clara, would have a supervisory role, a comfortable life." Clara felt Julian's hand tighten. She raised her gaze, meeting Mr. Caldwell's eyes. "Mr. Caldwell," she began, her voice surprisingly clear and calm, "what Julian and I have built is not a smaller venture. It's the result of hard work, passion, and a purpose that goes beyond profit. It is worthy in itself." Mr. Caldwell raised an eyebrow, a slight tremor in the wineglass in his hand. "Purpose, dignity, empty words for those who don't know true power." Julian chuckled, a soft sound that broke the tension. "Father, true power isn't in inheriting an empire, but in building one from scratch, in seeing the sparkle in every employee's eyes, in knowing that every family who depends on us has a secure future. That is power, that is legacy." He looked at Clara, his eyes shining with love and admiration. "I chose this life, Father. I chose Clara, and there is no fortune, no empire that can compare to what we have together." Mr. Caldwell's expression hardened. The scrape of his chair as he abruptly stood echoed through the room. "So you still prefer this, you fantasy? Very well, consider this your last chance. There will be no other." His voice was icy, cutting. "You are on your own, Julian. Completely." Julian also stood, his posture as imposing as his father's, but with a serenity Mr. Caldwell had never possessed. "I always have been, Father, and I couldn't be prouder of it." He took Clara's hand, intertwining their fingers. "Let's go, Clara." They left the mansion, the sound of their firm footsteps echoing through the silent corridors. The cold night air felt invigorating, a contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. The iron gates creaked again as they closed behind them, sealing the end of a chapter. In the car, as Julian drove back to the city, Clara leaned back in her seat, a deep sigh escaping her lips. "That was intense," she murmured. Julian squeezed her hand. "He'll never understand. But we don't need him to understand." The sound of his own heart beating strongly filled the car, a melody of freedom and love. They had faced the past, and emerged stronger, more united. Clean Dawn would continue to grow, not as a subsidiary, but as a beacon of their own creation, living proof that love was the most powerful of fortunes. The future, with its new battles and old ghosts, was calling, but they were ready. The soft purr of Julian's car engine carried them back to the city, to the home they had built brick by brick, choice by choice. The darkness of the night embraced the buildings, but inside the vehicle, a different light shone. Clara rested her head on Julian's shoulder, the sound of his regular, tranquil breathing a balm. The silence that followed was no longer tense, but filled with the certainty of a well-made decision, of a path chosen with the heart. "He'll never understand," Julian murmured, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "He doesn't need to," Clara replied, lifting her face to meet his eyes. A smile lit up her face. "We understand, and that's all that matters." The sound of their own hearts beating strongly was the melody of their freedom, undeniable proof that the love that bound them was the most powerful of fortunes. They had faced the past and emerged stronger, more united. Clean Dawn would continue to grow, not as a subsidiary, but as a beacon of their own creation, living proof that love was the most powerful of fortunes. 5 years passed like the seasons, bringing with them the spring of unprecedented growth. Clean Dawn was no longer just a successful company in the city. It had expanded to other major cities across the country, its offices now housing hundreds of dedicated employees. The constant ring of phones, click-clack of keyboards, and peals of laughter echoed through the corridors of their modern headquarters building, a vibrant contrast to the opulent silence of Julian's old mansion. Clara, now CEO, walked through the office with quiet confidence, the click of her heels echoing on the polished floor. She paused to chat with employees, her genuine smile and words of encouragement a driving force for the team. Julian, as chairman of the board, dedicated himself to strategy and innovation, always seeking new ways to improve services and the well-being of everyone who was part of the Clean Dawn family. The synergy between them was palpable, a harmonious dance of leadership and passion. In their home, a cozy dwelling with a flourishing garden on the outskirts of the city, the most precious sound was the laughter of their daughter, Lily. Her hurried little footsteps echoed through the hallway, followed by the joyful bark of Max, the family dog. Julian and Clara watched Lily play, their hearts overflowing with a joy that money could never buy. The wealth they now possessed was measured in moments, in bonds, in a future built with love and purpose. One afternoon, as Julian flipped through an old photo album, an image of his family's vast mansion caught his eye. The cold marble, the expensive artworks, the heavy silence that always hung over the rooms. He remembered his last conversation with his father, the ultimatum, the choice. A soft smile formed on his lips. "Thinking about the past?" Clara asked, sitting beside him, the scent of fresh coffee filling the air. Julian closed the album, the soft rustle of the pages meeting. "Just realizing how little I lost and how much I gained." He took her hand, kissing her fingers. "My father gave me an ultimatum: renounce you or lose my entire legacy. I chose you, and that was the greatest victory of my life." Clara squeezed his hand. "We faced ruin, Julian, but we discovered that true value wasn't in money, but in the passion that bound us. Clean Dawn became a symbol of resilience, ethics, and that success can be built on human values. They sponsored education programs for underprivileged youth, offered employment opportunities for those struggling to find their place, and their employees were treated with the respect and dignity they deserved. The sound of applause at charity events, the murmur of gratitude from a family helped. These were the new legacies Julian and Clara valued. On a sunny day, as they walked hand in hand through the park with Lily running ahead, the gentle wind rustled the tree leaves, creating a relaxing sound. The sun shone brightly, but it was no longer the dazzling gleam of gold or power, but the warm light of a love that had overcome all adversities. Julian's material loss had transformed into his greatest victory, living proof that in the end, love was the most valuable fortune of all. They had found their own clean, bright dawn together.